What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Raybon of the Action Network, and this is our AFC West Fantasy Preview episode. Here to break it down with me, one of the top fantasy rankers in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, what's going on?
What's up? I think my face is burnt a little bit. The other day we were at the beach. I don't think I put sunscreen on my face, so I'm paying for it dearly, but had a blast.
Oh yeah,
And happy birthday, Nikki.
Yeah, shouts to Nikki. We got to hang out on the beach. I escaped it. I got a little bit on my the back of my shoulders. I think that's the only spot I missed, but just throw a little aloe on there, you should be straight.
Yeah, exactly.
But for those that don't know, this is in these episodes we go through every fantasy relevant player in the division for each of the four teams. So let's jump right into it, and of course all of our East, North, and South episodes for AFC and NFC are already out right here on this channel, so be sure to check those out. But the Kansas City Chiefs, they are the favorite for the AFC West as usual. Patrick Mahomes going as the top quarterback off the board. Sean, thoughts on Mahomes? Are you taking Mahomes? Are you taking Allen? Are you taking Hurts? What are you doing with Patty, who's finished top five, excuse me, in each of the past 3 seasons and never worse than QB7?
Yeah, he's obviously the best quarterback in the game. He's still only 28, so he could get better this year. I think he also needs Travis Kelce to delay his inevitable decline, at least for one more season. Last year, it didn't look like Kelce was slowing down at all. So I think if Kelce can maintain that, I think Mahomes will have maybe a better supporting cast this year. You know, he's losing Juju Smith-Schuster and Mecole Hardman, but they weren't that key to Mahomes' success. But potentially a full season of Kadarius Toney, maybe Sky Moore breaks out in U2. I do like second-round pick Rashee Rice. They still have MVS, so I think this year, he could have a better supporting cast. I think you could argue either Mahomes or Allen for QB1. I'm still leaning Allen just because he has more rushing upside. I like Kincaid in that offense. So, this is the year we've been talking about it. I don't think you just skip quarterback early on anymore. So I think in spots, there are some times to take a Mahomes or an Allen, but I have been just tending to wait for Hurts, waiting for a Fields, trying to get one of those guys a little bit later on. But right now I still have Allen, my QB1, and Mahomes right behind him at QB2.
Yeah, it's really neck and neck for all three, all of the top 3 for me. I'm actually kind of leaning Mahomes. I think so. I'm what I'm hearing out of Buffalo, they might go a little more heavy personnel, a little run heavier, using more running back. So maybe that knocks Allen down a little bit. Whereas Mahomes was just so impressive. I mean, losing Tyreek Hill, and yet you add over a half a yard to yards per attempt from the season before. He lead the league in passing yards per game, lead the league in passing touchdowns, touchdown rate. I mean, this guy just every year but one of his career, he's averaged at least 8 yards an attempt. And each of the last 3 years, he's thrown the ball at least 38 times per game. So, it's hard not to like it. Now, the only thing that's changed really is outside of, what you mentioned with Juju is Matt Nagy's back at OC. Because Bieniemy goes to Washington, they're going to not use a fullback this year. So maybe Mahomes they open the offense up a little more because you don't have the fullback on the field. So maybe that's more snaps for a receiver. Maybe it's just more Noah Gray. Who knows? But either way, no problems with Mahomes because I think the market is just sharpened up in terms of quarterbacks, and I don't mind drafting one early. Or in the middle rounds. I'm with you. I think Fields is my sweet spot, but he's only one man. So, you can't guarantee to get him every draft. So I'm still getting a lot of, or kind of splitting my exposure between Mahomes, Hurts, Allen, Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson too. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, anybody that runs, I want him. And Mahomes runs enough, but he's just, as I mentioned, just a monster. And the receiving core could be even better this year. I mean, Juju was kind of hit or miss last year. Ended up with a decent season-long line, but a lot of it came in a few games. So if Rice or or Tony could make that next step. Like we heard a lot of hype about even Justin Ross. Like we're hearing hype about pretty much everyone on this roster, wide receiver wise. So that could be a good or a bad thing. But let's start with Tony, because I don't think there's too much to talk about with Mahomes. But Tony is going wide receiver 43 over the past couple of weeks. The reports are Kansas City wants him to be their number one receiver, which I mean does kind of line up with letting Juju go. But can he stay healthy? He missed 17 of 36 career games. And the other thing I should point out is that Kansas City was one of the two teams, along with Buffalo, reportedly that tried to trade for DeAndre Hopkins before he got released. So obviously Kansas City was not totally comfortable with Kadarius Toney as their number one. But I mean, as we sit here now in late June, that's what's going on. What are your thoughts on Tony?
Yeah, obviously he just has massive upside in this offense if he could stay healthy. And that's the huge question mark with him. He just, for whatever reason, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But when he's healthy, I think he will be the number two target behind Kelsey. I mean, he has massive touchdown upside. They can use him in unique ways around the goal line. And he goes in a range where he's likely going to be your wide receiver 4 anyway. And that's the time where I do like to focus more on upside. I mean, obviously Tony has a low floor. He can miss 10 plus games. So I think he is worth the risk. I just wouldn't go all in around wide receiver 43, but you definitely want some exposure to Tony. Best ball, like you said, like best ball, it is rough if a guy's missing games, but at wide receiver, I like to take 8 receivers anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. So I think based on Tony's upside, I think he's worth taking here at 43.
Yeah, I'll have some exposure, but definitely, I actually don't want him in best ball because I don't trust him to stay healthy, and I don't like racking up the missed games in best ball because obviously you want upside, but there's a lot of upside here. I think personally, I feel the better value is Sky Moore at wide receiver 52 because always like to target these second year elite candidates pretty much indiscriminately. Like it just. No matter what you think of a guy, they tend to just jump up in year 2. I mean, it happens a lot more often than not. Moore had pretty decent, targets per route, 19% last year. It was kind of average, but he's the one that they're talking about is going to play that Juju role, even though Tony is could be the quote unquote top receiver. I think Sky Moore actually may end up being more productive than Tony when you consider the health and the fact that Tony really never was able to even play like a starting number of snaps for a wide receiver. Like if you remember, he was always playing like 20 to 40% of the snaps. So I know they're going to kind of scheme him a lot of touches and do things, but Tony could end up a lot more like Hardman. And I think there's a chance that I think it's pretty kind of 50-50 between these two guys, and Moore is going about 10 spots later. In terms of the wide receiver ranks and a couple of rounds later. So I'm probably gonna take some shots on him because I think letting Juju go, Tony with the injury struggles. Yes, you drafted Rice, but I do think there's kind of a vote of confidence in Moore. And I think we were kind of early, a lot like the whole industry. I think saw rookie wide receiver on the Chiefs last year. They lose Tyreek. We're all hyped over Moore, and he plays 25-30% of snaps per game. But I think that in year 2, that's when you're going to see kind of the jump, for him. So I'll take my shot with him. But him and Tony are definitely, I think, going to be those 1-2. And then Valdez-Scantling is going to kind of get the low percentage routes. He was 15 average up the target last year, but it targeted on just 14% of his routes. So it equated to just 1.2 yards per route. Maybe improves on that a little bit, but he's a best ball only guy for me.
Yeah, we also have, I don't know if you mentioned Justin Watson hanging around. Like it is a crowded wide receiver room. So I think I take your point with Moore. He was such a disappointment last year that I think a lot of people shy away. But like you said, there is a chance he breaks out in year 2. And this is an offense we do want to take flyers and invest in. So I do think Moore is worth considering at wide receiver 54. I also like waiting for Rashee Rice down closer to wide receiver 70. I think he has similar upside to Moore, even as a rookie. He's a second rounder out of SMU. Love the landing spot, obviously, but he's more of a possession receiver anyway, kind of like a Juju. And just he reminded me, he gave me like Chris Godwin vibes. Obviously not that good, but that kind of receiver. So there's a chance that he could step up and take that Juju role if Sky Moore's struggling. I'm betting Sky Moore gets first crack at it. Plus, we keep talking about Tony potentially missing all this time. If Tony does miss time, a lot of these guys are going to have to step up. So I think Rice is a way to kind of invest in Tony's injury risk in a sense. So I think that Rice could surprise as a rookie in this offense. And I think wide receiver 70 is a good time to kind of take a flyer like that. So that's why I've been having a little bit more exposure to Rice than Moore. But I think just based on Moore's upside, I think he does make sense in that 55 range as well.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at it like, okay, I don't want to make kind of the same mistake with Rice that we made with Moore last year, where,
Right.
I feel like everyone was kind of overdrafting him, expecting him to play like this huge role. And I think Rice might kind of slot into kind of not like the same role as Moore, but similar playing time, at least to start, like about a quarter of the routes. And Justin Watson, he's going to make the team. They got like I think a 2-year, $3 million deal with like $1.5 million guaranteed. So, he's going to play special teams, but he should make the team. I think the question is, does Richie James, who only got about $500K guaranteed, does he make the team coming off a career year? And then we're hearing a lot of hype about Justin Ross. Maybe he's finally healthy. He gives them an element, maybe they don't have as much of, big 6'4", 210 guy, but, he'd probably have to cut into maybe like a MVS or a Watson. So I'm not necessarily buying the hype with him, but Rice is certainly, he's a guy I think we got to definitely monitor, because even if he starts the year as the wide receiver 4, like you said, Kadarius Toney, the health is, like he's going to miss games.
We should have a side bet on that. But I almost forgot about Justin Ross. I mean, he is worth monitoring. I mean, he had that potentially career-ending injury in college, but he was considered to be a first-round prospect. He was that good. So he's not a guy we should ignore. So if it's looking like he's healthy, he has a good training camp, things like that, like he could move up my draft board as well. So just one of the 8 receivers we have to monitor on the Chiefs right now.
Yeah, this is one you definitely want to pay attention in camp, because right now they got 5 receivers going in the top 90. And at one point, Richie James was going just outside there as well. He's kind of fallen off the map with the Ross hype, but I mean, it's not out of the question that the top 3 is a combination that isn't the top 3 getting drafted, which is Tony, Moore, and Rice, actually, as of now. Valdez-Scantling's probably the most, probably runs the most routes out of all of them, which is hilarious. Yep. But he's a best ball target. It would have been intriguing because he struggled last year in year 1, but now, another year with Patrick Mahomes, he's still, I would say, relatively in his prime. What is he, 20, 29? So, still should be in his prime. He could easily have a season where instead of, 42 catches and 2 touchdowns, he gets, 50 catches and 8 touchdowns or something like that. So definitely a guy I'll look at in best ball, because I think everyone's looking at all like the shiny new toys in this Chiefs offense. Kelsey, he's a tight end 1. I mean, how early you drafted him? I didn't see a slowdown with him last year. He still got targeted on 25% of his routes, 2.2 yards per route, which is excellent. And he's had at least 1,100 yards in all 5 years with Mahomes, along with at least 90 catches. How early are you drafting?
Yeah, I think he's a top 5 pick, just in terms of position drop off. And like I said, he is going to decline at some point. I'm not saying he will this year. He's 34, right? He's turning 34. But I had mentioned last year that I think the fact that he has such good chemistry with the best quarterback in the game, who's still entering his prime. So Patrick Mahomes is still ascending. That might slow down Kelsey's decline. So it's kind of offsetting. So I think that Mahomes could get even better this year, and Kelsey can just maintain. But he can't keep this up for another 3 years or so. But I think for this year, absolutely, he's the tight end 1. Absolutely a top 5 overall pick, because we were saying, all these receivers are kind of fighting for the number 2 target. Kelsey is still the alpha in this offense. He's going to see a ton of targets, ton of touchdowns. And just based on the tight end position, I know we like a lot of guys later on, like they could pop and be top 5 this year. like Kelsey is just the biggest lock in fantasy at such a key onesie position. So I definitely like taking Kelsey in the top 5 overall.
Yeah, and he's been so durable too. I mean,
Yeah.
not in the he had that, what was it, an ACL his rookie year, I think it was, where
Wow.
he and then
Yep.
since then he's missed 3 games in 9 years, I believe.
Yep.
It's just absurd. So yeah, I mean,
Knock on
I,
wood.
I haven't seen anything on film to suggest a slowdown. I haven't seen anything in the underlying metrics and the advanced metrics and in in separation numbers and the targets per route and anything like that to suggest that he's fallen off. So yeah, I don't mind him as a mid first round pick, because tight end is it's ugly. It's ugly.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the running game for KC. We have Pacheco entering year 2. That was a guy that we were both on early on, and he broke out in a big way over the second half. Week 10, and going through the postseason, because I think that kind of exemplifies his usage. Average about 13 and a half carries, 69 yards on the ground, and also 15 receiving yards. So he was averaging 84 yards from scrimmage on about 15 touches, 14, 15 touches from week 10 on, which is always like what you like to see as a rookie. I think that's kind of where he'll slot in this year. Kansas City, Andy Reid, usually not going to go with a workhorse back. They know the deal.
Yeah.
Got to keep these guys healthy, but RB26, I'm fine with it there. Only 6 touchdowns, I believe it was, for Pacheco rushing. I mean, he has double-digit, touchdown upside in this offense. And I don't think you're going to see McKinnon, kind of vulture touchdowns. And Edwards-Helaire, in the 3 games before he got hurt, he had only 10 carries and 5 targets on 38 snaps. So he already was just kind of way behind Pacheco and McKinnon after getting demoted. So what are your thoughts on this backfield?
Yeah, so Pacheco obviously had a good rookie season, should open as the week 1 starter, but he just didn't see enough receiving work to be like a consistent RB2. Only saw a target on 10% of his routes. And I think McKinnon and to a certain extent Edwards-Helaire should handle most of the receiving work still, which sucks because that does limit Pacheco's upside. But he operated as a goal line back. He had 4 touchdowns on 10 attempts inside the 5. He's also the type of back that doesn't need, carries around the goal line and score touchdowns. He's more of a home run hitter. Defenses will have to worry about Mahomes, Kelsey in the passing game. So he's going to see some pretty big holes. And the fact that the Chiefs will mainly be in positive game scripts bodes well for Pacheco. But just he's in that range where I'm okay with him at RB27 because I feel like he's just outside of the frozen punt here. But he is that type of back where just, it could be a pretty volatile backfield. I have pretty much written off Edwards-Helaire, but he could, make some noises here. And McKinnon's always going to kind of be handling the receiving work. So I just think Pacheco's ceiling is a little bit limited, but I'm okay taking him if he falls outside of the top 25 or so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm encouraged by what I saw. It was subtle, but I mentioned, just 2 receiving yards per game over the first 9 weeks of the season, but 15 from week 10 on, and his routes and his usage in the pass game did increase. For those first 9 weeks, he was on the field only about 10% of the pass snaps, and from week 10 on, it was about 35%, 40%, and especially once you started hitting the crunch time of the season and into the playoffs. So if he can get 40% of the routes, and they've shown they will target him down the stretch. His targets per route went up as well. So I'm encouraged by what I saw over that second half. I still think he'll be more like a Miles Sanders last year, but I mean, he could definitely get 15 carries, and 2 catches a game, and push for double-digit touchdowns. So, yeah, I'm fine with Pacheco here at 26. I rather wait on my RB2, and so I'm gonna have a lot of exposure to all these guys in that RB 20 to 30 range, because I think where you want to kind of lay off is once you start getting RB 8, 9 into like the high teens. I
Yeah.
think there's not as much separation as you would like between those guys to warrant a pick there over a wide receiver or locking up an elite quarterback or an elite tight end or something like that.
Yeah, and so I have a little note in my projections that McKinnon started dealing with like a nagging hamstring injury in week 11, and I think that kind of contributed to Pacheco seeing some extra work. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire was also out as well. But what do you think about Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Are you writing him off completely at this point, or do you think there's a chance he could?
I'm not writing him off completely. I always liked him in college, but I really think this is the Pacheco show. Like, this guy is good. Like, it's just the film don't lie. Like, this dude he's a baller. Like, we loved him last year because we knew he was going to be not so. Like, yes, McKinnon was banged up, but remember, McKinnon went on a torrid stretch in weeks 13 to 17, and that coincided with Pacheco still, putting up improved numbers. So McKinnon's actually the guy I think will take a step back. And if he does, I think you'll see I think Edwards-Helaire will kind of slot into that role, but I think you'll actually see even more Pacheco. But McKinnon, I am not drafting him, inside the top 50. He's going RB 43. He had a 5-game stretch where he scored 8 touchdowns in weeks 13 to 17. Didn't crack 9 half PPR points in any other game. He had a career high 10 touchdowns on 128 touches, which means he scored every 13 touches. For his career, he's scoring every 40 touches. He also averaged like 1.5 yards more per reception than he ever has. Then his career averaged over 9. And he played every single game, but he's missed 36 over the past 5 years. So
yeah,
and all of that, and he still averaged only 7.3 touches. Like, and he's over 30. So like Jarrett McKinnon screams fade.
Oh yeah.
Whatever you want to do with that. Like, personally, I'm just going to invest in Pacheco. But yeah, Edwards-Helaire, McKinnon's probably going to miss games, and he's probably not going to stay healthy again. So Edwards-Helaire could kind of factor back in, but I just really think Pacheco, he has too much talent to keep him off the field, and that's why you saw his pass game usage start going up down the stretch last year, because I just think they want to get him the ball. No Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce's 34. Like, they need playmakers, and he's that.
Just one last question about Pacheco, and then we can move on. But this is a situation I've faced in drafts like constantly as I'm debating. So I'll let you pick one of these running backs. James Conner, Isaiah Pacheco, or Dave Montgomery. They're usually all available right around the same time, that I'd like to draft these guys. Which one would you pick if they're available right now?
I'll go Dave Montgomery, because he usually goes the latest of those three. Probably has the best offensive line. And the offenses aren't as far apart anymore as you would think, between the Chiefs and the Lions. Like, obviously the Chiefs are still better, but Andy Reid shenanigans, there's always a little bit of downside there with Pacheco. But Montgomery, that Jamal Williams role with 45 carries inside the 10, leading the league by 16. I think Montgomery could be ticketed for that. So I like Montgomery, but I like Pacheco as well. I have no problem with him at his RB 26. No problem with him at that ADP. I want all of those guys. Connor's probably the riskiest, just because the Cardinals are going to be a dumpster fire. But unless they sign a running back, and I haven't seen them make any moves, he's probably going to be in there like 85% of the snaps if he's healthy. So
exactly.
Okay. So to recap for the Chiefs, who do you like? Any sleepers, undervalued guys?
Yeah, I just think Rashee Rice going around wide receiver 70. We're going to have to take flyers on some of these Chiefs receivers. I just like that. I think that's a sweet spot to kind of gamble on his upside, and he won't kill you if he doesn't pan out. But I do like him as a rookie. Like I said, he gives me like Chris Godwin type vibes. So I like him. I like basically all Chiefs players. We want to invest in this offense, but I think based on his ADP, he's one of the best values.
Yeah, the Chiefs have no receivers going inside the top 40. So
wow,
not a bad team to invest in. For me, I'm going Sky Moore. I think he'll take that year 2 leap and emerge as a big part of this offense. And he's in the wide receiver 50 range. It's pretty much all upside from there. You should have your starters and probably maybe even your wide receiver 4 by then as well. So like me some Sky Moore. What about busts or overvalued guys?
Got to be Jarrett McKinnon. His ADP isn't like egregious.
Yes,
like he will kind of put up those numbers at the end of the day. In a PPR format,
he shall not.
Where you start 5 running backs, that'd be the only time.
I would take the over all day on 43. Over as in he'll finish lower, but yeah, higher than 43.
Right, but he doesn't have
yeah,
much upside. Like that's my
yeah,
point.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
nah.
we're here to win fantasy football, not finish like sixth.
The
So
dude
if you
at
want to
7 touches
win,
per game.
yeah, if you want to win your league, don't take him. Take somebody else in this range because there's a ton of guys with way more upside than Jarrett McKinnon in this range.
Yeah, last year, anytime you see one of these PPR backs pop, like you want to get off that next year. Like there's always going to be a couple of them that pop, and you got to get out in front of them rather than chase the year before. Because first of all, this is the Chiefs. Like it's not like they need to be. They're going to be behind a lot.
Yeah.
And if anything, McKinnon's probably going to be mostly a pass blocker. I mean, I just don't see him getting much more than those 7 touches per game if he even stays healthy.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the Chargers. Herbert is the QB7. I think the interesting thing with him is in this offense is that Kellen Moore comes over from the Cowboys. Was the OC of the Cowboys. Now he's replacing Joe Lombardi as the offensive coordinator in LA. And I mean, I don't know like if you've done your team play projections yet, but the Chargers could be even faster this year. I mean, they were top 6 in situation neutral pace according to Football Outsiders in each of Herbert's 3 seasons. Well, Kellen Moore with the Cowboys, situation neutral pace, second, first, second. So there's not much room to go up, but if there is, this Charger team could be even faster. Herbert's been kind of up and down in his career. QB8 in points per game his rookie year, then QB3 in 2021, but then down to QB15 last year. And I think that was a lot to do. Number one, there's a lot of injuries, but number two, I just think Lombardi's scheme, there's a lot more of those like underneath throws. He wasn't really going down the field as much. So hopefully Kellen Moore can unlock that. What do you think?
Oh yeah, hopefully. Yeah, hopefully they operate at a faster pace, although they don't really need to, but that's something Kellen Moore could bring. But I think it's the downfield passing. Justin Herbert had the 3rd lowest intended air yards last year, like next to Kyler and Matt Ryan and Daniel Jones. So that's terrible. I mean, he has one of the best arms in football. So hopefully Moore, forces him push the ball downfield a bit more. And Herbert had a pretty down year last year. He was QB11, but that had a lot to do with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams missing just a ton of time. He only had both of those guys healthy for 4 full games, the final 4 games of the season. So he should improve, with injury luck to those receivers, but they also added a 1st-round receiver in Quentin Johnson, which could help, just solidify their depth where if one of those guys goes down, the offense doesn't fall apart. So I think that's massive. And, Herbert at QB7 makes sense because I still want these, quarterbacks that run a lot like Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields. So Herbert makes sense at QB7. It's just like, he only offers so much upside. And at that point, I'm probably targeting running backs, wide receivers still. So usually that's sort of a dead zone when it comes to quarterbacks. But I do like investing in this passing attack with Kellen Moore there now.
Yeah, because I mean the thing about Herbert is, he goes, he's QB7, but he usually goes, closer to the top 50, top, first 5 rounds. Whereas, you could wait and get a Deshaun Watson usually. A few rounds later, even though he's only a couple of slots lower in the QB ranks. And even Trevor Lawrence sometimes goes a lot later if you're going to. Now, I do think Herbert has significant upside. I do want exposure to Herbert because, again, I think just the upside with the pace and with the receiving talent. I mean, you're looking at a potential, like I would say like a 45, 50 touchdown, 5,000 yard season is like it is high end of outcomes. So like I definitely want some exposure to him. And he averaged 18 more pass yards a game with Keenan Allen last year, 286 versus 268. And his yards per attempt was almost a full yard higher in the 10 games Allen played. So Allen, you're going to count on him, even though he's getting a little older, to play more than 10 games, play 14, 15, 16 games. Mike Williams missed 4 games as well, as you mentioned. So a lot of talent, no real qualms about Herbert. I do want some, but probably a best ball. I love the upside in best ball. It's there are better values, I think, at quarterback once you get past, Fields and Jackson than going Herbert there. Allen is wide receiver 17. I think people are actually sleeping on him a little. I mean, he missed 10 games last year. Every time a guy misses games, I feel like they're a little bit discounted that next year. But he still averaged 6+ catches and 70+ yards every single season since 2017. So, like, this guy he still runs routes with the best of them. He's always in the top 15 every year since 2017 in points per game. And last year when he was on the field, he was still very, very productive, even with Herbert having a down year. So I don't think Keenan Allen's really going to fall off too much at all. Average 6.6 catches for 75.2 yards per game, and that was even with kind of being in and out and having some nagging injuries last year. So I think he's still going to kind of gracefully kind of play through another couple of years before he really decline. So I'm buying Keenan Allen at wide receiver 17. I mean, you're almost guaranteed a top 12 to 15 at least wide receiver in points per game anytime he's on the field. And if anything, adding another guy like Johnston should only help take some of the coverage off Johnson and get him, off Allen and get him some more single coverage.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, if he's healthy, he should easily beat this ADP. I think he was like wide receiver 6 or 7 in points per game when he was actually healthy last year. So he's still got it. And he's just one of the easiest players to project when he's healthy. Just pencil him in for 100 catches, 1,100 yards, and 6 to 7 touchdowns. And I'll take that at wide receiver 17, especially if this offense does, improve, play at a faster pace. I love getting Allen right here.
Yeah. And remember Kellen Moore, in the 2021 season with the Cowboys, they had 3 receivers finish in the top 45. CeeDee Lamb was 17, Cooper was 26, and then Wilson was 45. So, with the pace, with the talent they have, I wouldn't be surprised to see that again. So, you have Mike Williams at 25. That's always been your guy. But now he's got some competition from Johnston, who I know you like as well. And then Palmer is also, like, you love these big body Charger receivers,
of course.
Right.
Of course
so how do you kind of what do you see as the playing time? And do you think these guys can like Williams is wide receiver 25, usually goes 25 to 30. And then Johnston usually in that in the late 40s. What do you see as far as those guys in terms of living up to the ADP?
Yeah, so I still like Mike Williams in best ball, specifically stacking him with Justin Herbert in this range. Unfortunately, he is dealing just with like a nagging back injury, it seems. So I don't know if we can count on him to play 17 games. But when he's out there, he has high-end wide receiver 2 upside. And I think last year he was definitely hurt by Herbert not pushing the ball downfield as much. So I think if Moore, has Herbert push the ball downfield, that's only going to benefit Mike Williams. And I love Quentin Johnston. He has all the attributes to be a true number 1 wide receiver. He just hasn't put it all together yet, but he has the physical attributes. I mean, he's 6'4", 212, but he hasn't been really good at contested catches. He doesn't play like a bigger receiver. So hopefully with like NFL coaching, he can fix that. And he has like DeAndre Hopkins type of upside if that comes to fruition. And he's in a great offense to do that. So I do like taking some flyers on Johnston around wide receiver 47. I think that, if either Allen or Williams goes down, he has wide receiver 2 sort of upside. You can't really say that with many guys, just outside the top 50. There's also a chance that Josh Palmer stays involved, especially if Johnston struggles. But in this range, I'm still into investing in upside. So I like Johnston there. And then back to my boy, Josh Palmer. I think that last year was the year to have him. And he was able to step up when both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were down. I think that's why his value might be a little bit overinflated this year. So I'm not getting much Josh Palmer at wide receiver 69. I think last year was the year to have him. Johnston is a way better talent, could overtake him fully in his rookie season. So Palmer's not a guy I'm getting too much of this year.
Yeah. You bring up a good point about Williams and the back injury. I believe he suffered it in the Jaguars in the playoff game, right?
Yeah.
That is concerning. And I just wonder if the Chargers, might have been kind of looking ahead because, Johnston is another, they're not the same kind of player, but another big body or, on the bigger side. Palmer, like they got a lot of size here. I just wonder if they want to maybe limit Williams snaps a little bit more to keep him healthy. I mean, he's 29 years old, but these big bodied receivers like a Mike Williams, that already, you see some like these guys can fall off a cliff, and you combine that with a back injury and two other guys that could, like they could easily play Mike Williams like 65 to 75% of the snaps if they really wanted to and be completely fine. So I'm actually a little bit worried about Mike Williams at wide receiver 25. I mean, he was going closer to 30, a few weeks ago, but I think he actually might be a little bit risky here. Just because, they're, like I said, Johnson, they obviously draft him for a reason. Allen's going to play more games. So yeah, Williams actually might have some downside now that I think about it a little more.
He is definitely risky. That's why I said I prefer in best ball stacks with Herbert specifically, because I think that's how Herbert has, a top 3 type of season that you were alluding to, is like Mike Williams is healthy and has a great season and they're pushing it downfield. So I think Herbert with Mike Williams is just maximizing that upside. But I agree, just taking Williams by himself is a bit risky, just because I don't know if he can play 17 games anymore. And like you said, if they do limit his snaps, that's probably wise. And he could still put up numbers, but certainly wide receiver 25 would be a bit high if that ends up being the plan. So yeah, I'd be careful with him, but stacking him with Herbert is just how you maximize your best ball team ceiling.
Yeah, he had 5 games last year where he had under 35 yards and 4 games with under 20 yards. So a little bit of boomer bust. I think that you could kind of see that continue for Williams. What about Gerald Everett's tight end 19? What do you think of him?
Yeah, so he was solid last year. I think that was like the best case scenario because where he finished tight end 15 because both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams missed a ton of time. And also Donald Parham missed a ton of time too. So it was like Everett. I remember we were talking, like we had Everett as like a top 5 tight end at times. Like he was popping my models. So if last year was the best case scenario is tight end 15, I think he's going to take a slight step back this year because everyone's back healthy, and now they have Quentin Johnston in the mix. But, tight end 19 is kind of cheap for the Chargers starting tight end. So I would be getting a little bit of Everett in this range, but I still think I rather tap into the upside of like Kincaid, Laporta, those types of guys. But Everett, he's a solid guy at tight end 19 range. But I think last year was definitely his ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. Like without Keenan Allen, Everett 20% targets per route and 6 targets a game. With Keenan Allen, it dropped from 20% to 17%, and the targets dropped from 6 to 5 per game. So, and I think that's kind of where he'll be, especially with them adding, more receiving talent. You still got Eckler there, which is that kind of hurts tight ends because Eckler is such a good receiving back. He's
and
going. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, Everett's one of the fascinating things, if you look at his career stats, is his receptions and receiving yards have gone up each of the last 6 seasons. I think that trend comes to an end.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough for him to get any better. I mean, he finishes the RB3 2 years ago and is the RB1 last year. So yeah,
it's just been a steady, just complete rise. And I think last year was the peak.
Yeah, it's 42.5 yards per game, 6.3 catches. Yeah, they probably don't need to do all that, but he'll still probably be around 100 yards per game, and has 38 touchdowns over the last 2 years, and he's only missed 1 game. And I think that's where him only having about 150 touches per season over his first 4 years in the league really helps, because he's starting to carry the load now, but he's been able to stay healthy. And obviously he keeps himself in very good shape. So I guess the only question with him is it going to be Kelly or Spiller as the handcuff? I'd probably still lean Kelly. I just don't think we've seen enough out of Spiller, where Kelly has shown some flashes, but it's probably not going to matter if Eckler continues to stay healthy. But Kelly did get 7 carries and 34%, at least 34% of snaps in each of the last 7 games, including the wild card game, where I don't know why Eckler wasn't getting used more, but Any thoughts on who might win that battle, or just kind of a wait and see?
Well, it's definitely a wait and see. I would say Kelly is the favorite.
Mm.
He managed to hold off Spiller last year, so I don't see that changing drastically. But it's far from a slam dunk. So right now, I think Kelly, since he's around RB 73 and Spiller's around RB 80, I think Kelly is clearly the better play because I don't think it's going to be that close. But both of these guys are probably worth flyers at times in that range because they're one injury away of potentially being, like an RB3 flex. But right now I would lean Kelly. And you said last year you were at the game and Kelly
Yeah,
was
he looked
balling out,
good. He
right?
looked good.
Yeah.
His numbers aren't really impressive for his career, but he did look good. He has looked good on film. So yeah, I would give him the edge as well. And I mean, he's essentially a free handcuff if he is the handcuff. So that is something I would monitor. But unfortunately, we don't really know what's going to happen. We could just make predictions, and we both think it's going to be
Hey,
Kelly.
that's what we
But
do.
yeah, no, I mean, in this situation, it's still somewhat of a toss up. Like it's still probably like 60
Yeah.
40, 65 35.
Yeah. I mean,
Kelly.
Kelly was a fourth round prospect too. Spiller was a fourth rounder last year. He was kind of volatile
Yeah,
prospect.
got hurt.
And he did
Yeah.
well, he didn't flash even when he was healthy. So that's why I'm just saying I would just give the edge to Kelly right now until proven otherwise. And their ADPs are so close that, I think that Kelly's the way to go at the time. We have training camp coming up. We're going to have a lot of news and things like that. So this is something to monitor. We definitely want to invest in this backfield, these backups. But right now, it's Kelly for me.
And I mean, maybe the Chargers go out and get one of those free agent running backs too. Because if maybe if like they could get a cheap Kareem Hunt or somebody like that,
Yeah.
you never know, because they had Sony Michel in there last year, just giving him carries over Spiller too. So all right. So to recap, sweepers and bust, I'll just go quick. For me, I think Keenan Allen's a little bit undervalued. I think Mike Williams is a little bit overvalued. What about you?
For my sleeper, just Quentin Johnston. That's the time of range. I do like to take a rookie receiver, especially in a really good offense like this. Like I said, he has upside, even if Keenan Allen or Mike Williams miss time. So that's why I think this year, unfortunately, Josh Palmer's my bust. I just think he needs a lot of things to go his way, and he's being drafted inside the top 70. So I just don't see it. Last year was the time to have Josh Palmer.
All right, let's go to the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton replaces Nathaniel Hackett / Jerry Rosberg head coach. Joe Lombardi comes here, but this is Sean Payton's offense.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, I mean, he's going QB 15, and I think he's the key here. Like, if you like Russell Wilson, you probably like other guys on this offense. So, I mean, last year everything went wrong. I mean, he had double the amount of batted passes that he's ever had in his career. He had 18 batted passes last year. So I'm assuming that'll regress a little bit, but he took more sacks. His sack rate on pressures went from 18% 2 years ago, 18% 3 years ago to 20% 2 years ago to 27% last year. That was a career worst. He only scrambled 4.9% of the time, where a couple years ago, he was around 8%, but the last 2 years it's been down around 5%. So, he needs to scramble more, I think, to unlock, what he's capable of. But I mean, just across the board, his worst season. Do you think Sean Payton can turn him around, or I guess to what extent? Because we he's kind of on the downside of his career to, getting a little older as a guy who did rely on his legs, short, made things happen off schedule. That's probably not going to be harder, but like, how much do you see a potential turnaround here with Peyton?
Well, yeah, it can't get much worse. And despite the disaster of a season last year, he still finishes the QB 16, which is lower than his ADP. But and the other side of the coin was Geno Smith finishes the QB 5. And I said last year, it's not like Russell Wilson's going into a much better situation. He had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Doesn't get much better than that. So I think this is about right. I mean, who are you going to take him over? Anthony Richardson, Jared Goff? No.
I would take Goff and Richardson over Wilson, but I would take Wilson over Rodgers.
Yeah, that's basically Rodgers is the punching bag. But yeah, that makes sense. That's why it does seem fair. I think he will turn it around. I don't know what happened last year. I guess he didn't want to learn the audibles too. There's some talk about that. So having Sean Payton, I think, will correct a lot. And Wilson still has some solid weapons, and Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Greg Dulcich. So QB 18 sounds about right. I don't know if he's going to bounce back with like a top 5 season or anything like that, but high end QB2 season, certainly in his range of outcomes. I'm just not too interested just where he's going if Richardson or Goff are there. But once they're off the board, sure, I'll take some Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, in that range, there is some, like, if you wait on a quarterback, I mean, we keep talking about it. It's tougher and tougher to wait on quarterbacks these days, but Wilson, I know he's lost some weight. They're saying maybe he'll look to scramble a little bit more. They've been practicing more scramble drill. So, I mean, there's some upside there. I don't mind Wilson. Yeah. Like you said, he's kind of going right around where he finished last year anyway, and what was essentially a disaster. So, at QB 15, QB 16 is probably, there's mostly upside there. So I actually don't mind him. Jerry Jeudy's at wide receiver 20 and Cortland Sutton at wide receiver 39. What are your thoughts on these two the top 2 Bronco receivers?
Yeah, so I still like Jeudy. He's despite Wilson's struggles last year, he still managed to finish the wide receiver 18. He's still young. He's only 24 years old, still entering his prime. But he should face more target competition this year with Tim Patrick back. I do like rookie Marvin Mims because the Broncos, they didn't really have a number 3 wide receiver they could rely on last year. I mean, it was ugly. So, he should have more target competition. I don't think that's going to knock Jeudy off too much. But I do think the wide receiver 21 range is fair. The only problem is he sits like atop a pretty massive wide receiver 2/wide receiver 3 tier, where you can get guys a little bit later on that I'm projecting just 1 point lower than him. So that's the only reason I'd shy away. Is I'd rather just wait and get a Tyler Lockett, Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, maybe a couple rounds later. So this just has to do with tiers, where I think Judy's ranked accordingly, but that's, he's sitting on top of a massive tier. So where Judy's going, I rather just pivot. And sometimes you get Justin Fields there, George Kittle, or Joe Mixon. I'm usually attacking other positions when this wide receiver tier starts. So that's kind of why I'm fading Judy, not necessarily his rank, but just this range. It's easier to wait at receiver.
Yeah, and he's a very good receiver, but there's there's some uncertainty here, and his best performances last year came in a couple of games that Cortland Sutton missed. When Sutton was out for a couple of games, Jeudy averaged 8.5 targets, 7.5 catches, 75 yards, and had 1.5 touchdowns per game. With Sutton in the lineup, 4 for 63, still pretty good, but not many touchdowns to speak of. And he's a solid pick there, but he's nothing's kind of screaming out at you, I guess.
Yeah.
Sutton worries me a little bit. I mean, I know he's at 3 years removed now from the injury, but he just really hasn't been the same. That year before the injury, 2019, 2.1 yards per route, 5 yards after the catch per reception. And since, he's only averaging about 1.5 yards per route. And he had the worst yards per catch in the league last year among qualifiers at just 2.1. Yards after the catch per reception, just 2.1. And that's been dropping, 2019. It was more than double that, and just kind of got halved ever since he came back. So I think he's a little bit risky. Mims, the fact that they drafted Mims in the end of the second round, and Patrick's coming back, like you said, if Sutton struggles, there's a chance he kind of maybe doesn't play, 90% of the snaps as a true starting wide receiver like he used to. So yeah, I'm not really on Sutton. Patrick, I was kind of down on, but he's definitely gonna get a chance to probably start. I mean, he's you're paying him $10 million this year, and
he got paid.
Yeah, and he's their best blocking receiver as well.
Yeah.
So, there's just because of the uncertainty. I mean, if you look at Patrick at wide receiver 90 and Sutton at wide receiver 39, I actually, Patrick's actually the guy, probably the better value there. So I can't knock him too much. And then Mims at 84, probably more of like a situational deep threat gadget type of player. But he is really their only speed at the skill position. I mean, Judy's not like super fast. Williams and Pirine not super fast. Sutton, like really, that's how I think Mims gets on the field is because they need some speed. But Dulcich probably is a value at tight end 16. He averaged just over 40 yards per game in his rookie year.
Yeah, so I think first off, is Cortland Sutton still kind of like on the trade block? What's up with that, or is that died down? There's a chance he could still get traded.
Yeah, but I mean that probably wouldn't be a good sign because that would just kind of tell you that they don't why would you trade Cortland Sutton if you're Sean Payton? You're coming in here like he should be a locked in starter,
right?
Like he's supposed to be good, but he just really has been very average, even a little below time since coming back.
We'll see. But going back to Marvin Mims, I think that you're right. Like he's the speed. He is what I think we wanted KJ Hamler to be, and what Denver. I mean, Hamler's still there, but Mims will have that kind of role. He's like a really fast slot receiver, but he's not really a possession guy. He's a vertical threat. So in Sean Payton's scheme, that has some upside, especially in best ball. So I think he is absolutely worth a flyer in that range. Have to figure, he's going to have a big player or two every once in a while. So love him in best ball, but yeah, I'm passing on Sutton at ADP and investing in Patrick at wide receiver 97. That seems pretty egregious, and he always seems to outperform ADP. So that's kind of how I'm handling the Broncos receivers, is kind of punting on Judy and Sutton and investing in these cheaper guys, Mims and Patrick.
Yeah, I hope Sutton gets traded because that would really open it up for Mims. But yeah, Patrick, I was down on him, but he actually might be a cheap guy who's getting like 80-90% of the snaps. Although that you do worry about, a guy who's never like an amazing athlete coming back off the ACL. So just another guy to kind of monitor, but could be a value. But yeah, Sutton's kind of the guy I'm a little bit worried about. Dulcich, I like him at tight end 16. I think he has a chance to finish top 12. I know Manhurts is there to block, and they got Troutman, but Dulcich is a receiving tight end, and this offense is going to be a completely different one. So that is a little bit concerning, but it's like this. There's only so many tight ends with that, like the talent that Dulcich has, and there's a chance that he is a big part of this offense. Like he could be the number 2 target after Judy. If Sutton struggles and Patrick kind of more of a jack of all trades. So like him. What do you think of Javonte? Because he's going inside the top 20. Me, I don't like to trust these guys where it's like coming off injuries. We don't know exactly how well they're healing. We don't know exactly how much they're going to play early on in the year. He didn't just tear his ACL. He also ruptured his LCL and suffered trauma to other structures in and around his knee. So even if the ACL is good, it doesn't mean his like entire leg and knee is healed. And we keep hearing Denver is one of the top spots for Dalvin Cook. So like I'm out on Javonte. Rather get me some Pirine at 39. What about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Just he might not be ready by week 1. And even if he is, like, what's his role going to be? Are they going to ease him in? Kind of like what we saw with J.K. Dobbins last year. It's a very scary situation. And he has RB1 upside. We know that. But I'm probably going to hold off this year just because there's too much downside. There's other backs in this range that can give you 17 quality games. And we just can't say that about Javonte right now. So yeah, RB22, he would have to fall outside of like the top 28, I think, for me to like consider him until we get some more positive news. But I'm right there with you. I think RB22 is way too high.
Yeah. 11.9 carries for 53 yards per game in his rookie year, 11.8 for 51 last year. So I think that he just might not be a guy who can handle 20 carries, and that, the fact that they got Pirine in and they're flirting with Cook kind of tells you that they probably feel the same.
Yeah. So Pirine at RB39, that's a range where, it's mainly backups where they probably need an injury to post RB2 numbers. And Pirine already has a clear path to that. Week 1, he might be the starting running back. So I love P. Ryan at RB 39 right now. And he could get a handful of carries. Like I said, like Javonte could struggle. They could put him on ice. And I think an interesting stack with P. Ryan would be Breece Hall, who is another back I think has a ton of upside, but might start the season kind of slow. So you get P. Ryan starting the first couple of games. Breece Hall's easing in. And then, Breece Hall has a ton more value week 3 on. I think that P. Ryan and Breece Hall stacks are kind of sneaky, but I love P. Ryan at RB 39 right now.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even touch Breece Hall where he's going.
I know you don't like him.
Especially, well, not even just the fact that like there's the injury question marks and he's going like as a top 12 back, but the Jets are like one of the top landing spots for Cook as well. So like,
true, yeah.
Like when you factor in all that, there's a lot more downside. And don't lose your draft early in the first 5 rounds.
It's almost like P. Ryan would be a good stack with a running back that you could see kind of getting off to a slow start is all I'm getting at.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And P. Ryan was RB3 overall in weeks 12 and 13 when Mixon was out. So P. Ryan absolutely can handle a full workload. So love getting him right here.
All right. Who do you like for sleepers, undervalued guys for the Broncos?
Greg Dulcich all the way. I mean, he was a tight end 10. The 10 games he was healthy last year, he wasn't even able to play till week 6. So he missed a lot of training camp preseason as a rookie. Could be even better in year 2. The only concern is it's a new coaching regime, so they might like Albert O more than the old coaching staff. He could, factor in a bit, but I love Dulcich in the tight end 16 range. Obviously has top 12 upside.
Yeah, I like Dulcich as well. There's like you said, there's only so many guys that have that top 12 upside. He does. I also think Russ could be a sleeper this year. I again, like all things considered, as bad as the year as he had, still
can't get worse.
Rushing upside, increased his rushing production over his last 5 games. I think he'll do more of that this year. So I don't mind him in that QB 15 to 17 range, and P. Ryan as well. But be mindful of the fact that Cook could sign here. So I'm not going overboard at least until Cook is signed. Busts.
Cortland Sutton. I just think he's priced too high, especially with Patrick coming back. Marvin Mims could make some noise. So I think Sutton is probably the most overpriced guy on the Broncos.
I agree, though. I'd say Javonte Williams gives him a run for his money.
Oh, yeah.
And just the fact that he tore all these ligaments, and I mean, you got Cook, you got P. Ryan, you got injury issues. You never had average 12 carries in a season, even. Not loving it for Javonte, even though he's a talented guy.
Yep.
All right, Raiders. We can go pretty quick here, but I think the most interesting thing is Josh Jacobs. I'm starting to get a little worried about him. I know he's got this contract situation. He might play on the franchise tag. He's been a top 16 running back every year of his career, but he had 340 carries last year. It's only happened 5 other times, excluding when Le'Veon Bell sat out the next year, but 5 other times over the last decade when we've seen at least 320 a back get. They've averaged 7 missed games the next year, and all 5 of them dipped at least 1 yard in their yard per carry average. And Jacobs did post a career high 4.9 last year. So I just think the efficiency is going to be down. And even though they went 6-11, they lost 9 of those 11 games by 1 score. So they still have a bottom 5 win total. And things could be really bad in terms of game script for the Raiders this year. So I think last year was the year to buy low on Jacobs when everyone freaked out because he played in a preseason game or something. This year, I don't think I'll.
Yeah, but he looked really good in that preseason game. That was
he did. But
thing.
I just think this is the year to like take a start. Like I was getting Jacobs it's like the RB 25, RB 30 last year. Now I have to pay a top 10 price, and the guy's not even signed. I think this is kind of the start of Frozen Pond. Like after Nick Chubb, Jacobs number 8. That worries me a little. Just game script, new quarterback, potentially injured quarterback, potentially it's just a bad defense, game script, like just a lot of concerns. So yeah, not really feeling Jacobs. What about you?
Yeah, obviously last year is the time to get him. He was a league winner, no doubt about it. I actually had in my notes last year, he was my sleeper pick because said they're going to run him to the ground and kick him to the curb. But like you said, just 340 carries. It's hard to bounce back with a repeat season, but I did like the increase in usage as a pass catcher. I mean, despite having Abdullah and Bolden there, he led the way with the receiving usage, average around, 50 to 60 routes run per game. So that was encouraging, especially if they're going to be trailing more this year. So this situation is definitely worth monitoring. It's really hard to project the guy who might hold out, but I think RB8 is a bit rich, like you said. There is a little bit concern there. So this is one of the situations. Should have had him last year. Wouldn't overpay him this year, and especially with these concerns. I'm lukewarm on him at RB8.
And he missed seven, about two to three games a year his first 3 years in the league, and then played all 17 last year. Like, especially with that much usage, and the fact that he's not really going to probably be in camp at all. Like, it's one of those things. Like, I've just watched enough football for enough years to like, there's, you can't knock him too much, but just kind of a gut feel that this is going to be a little bit of a step back at least into just like what we normally get from Jacobs, like somewhere in like the 800 to 1100 rushing yard range, 13 to 15 games, like just not the guy we got last year.
But that was a lesson last year where preseason isn't useless, because if you watch that, it was like something like the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah, it was.
And he was out there, but I was like, oh my God, he looks really good now. So that's why it's worth watching preseason. But that was bizarre that he was out there. That was just a bizarre preseason. But yeah, like he looked like on a different level last year. Unfortunately, I think that will obviously be his best season ever.
Yeah. And so the quarterback situation now, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is going as QB 29. Josh McDaniels says he's not concerned about the offseason foot surgery, but Garoppolo, as far as I'm aware, has not passed his physical yet. And the Raiders can release him free of charge if he does not pass his physical before the start of the season. But then you're looking at like Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell, the rookie, maybe a Carson Wentz or the defense, I don't think is very good. Like this, and I'm not really feeling this Raider team. But talk to me. What's your outlook for this offense?
No wonder Davante Adams is pissed right now. I mean, what a disaster.
Yeah, but... and those cryptic tweet, that cryptic whatever he said, like that doesn't bode well for fantasy either. When he was like, I don't like how they're going to use me this year.
No, yeah. So not interested in Jimmy G in fantasy. I think he benefited a lot from being in the 49ers system. I have all the respect for Kyle Shanahan making bad quarterbacks look good, and he had a ton of weapons in San Francisco. Let's face it. So Raiders, although they have one of the best receivers in the game in Davante Adams, it's not an upgrade. They lost Darren Waller. So I am all out on Jimmy G, especially just the chances that he could get cut, make him actually have a lower floor than most in this range. So yeah, I'm all out on Jimmy G. And it's really tough to project the pass catchers, just not knowing how this is going to shake out.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Davante Adams at wide receiver six even seems a little bit risky because, going from Rodgers to Carr, but Carr was his boy. Like they knew each other. They had chemistry. Now, even if it's Garoppolo, I mean, Davante was averaging 16 yards a catch last year. He was running more downfield routes, and that's just not going to be there with Jimmy. So, who knows how that would look even with him. Renfro, I think he might get traded. I don't think they really want to use him. I don't think McDaniels likes him the way Gruden did. And Carr and him also had chemistry, and now Carr's gone. But Renfro took a big step back, just 17% targets per route after 22% in the his first 3 years in the league. And the yards per route went from 1.9 to 1.1. So, I think if anything, it's going to be Jacoby Myers and they're going to use a lot of 2 tight end sets, which is what Adams is alluding to. So maybe Mayer at tight end 25 could take a flyer on him, but Hooper is still there. So this is just the offense I just really don't want anything to do with, even though like the defense should be bad enough that like they have to pass a lot. Like there's just a lot of bad juju right now. I feel like with this Raider team, like this could be a dumpster fire. This could be the worst team in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adams at wide receiver 6, it's not a great situation, but he's QB proof. Let's face it. He put up wide receiver number 1 numbers with Brett Hundley under center in Green Bay. So I think he still sounds about right at wide receiver 6. But like you said, Jimmy G doesn't have chemistry with anybody on this team. So there's the chance he targets someone like Jacoby Myers a bit more than we expect, which would ding Devontae a bit. And then Hunter Renfrow, if he gets traded, that'll help project, some of these players a little bit higher. But Jacoby Myers he's tough to trust at wide receiver 50. He's doesn't have a high ceiling, and he tends to need a lot of volume to produce. And playing alongside Devontae Adams is going to cut into that. So it's really hard to invest in any pass catcher right now until we see how this shakes out.
Yeah, because Adams obviously he's been QB proof, but I would still say this year more than any other, he probably has downside, like the most downside he's had in like over half a decade
ever. Yeah,
and then Myers is no longer the top target. Renfro's completely kind of out of the equation. Like McDaniels just for whatever reason doesn't like his freestyling, quadruple cut whatever routes. I don't even know. Like he's kind of in the doghouse, and then they got 2 tight ends, so it's not even like Mayer can just come. It's not like Laporta situation where it's like he's got a clear path. Like Hooper could definitely, play like half the snaps. So I'm pretty much out on this entire offense. But Jacobs really does worry me. I just think there's a lot of downside with him at RB8. Like I wouldn't pencil him in for the same production just because McDaniels is still here that he had last year, and Renfrow as well. I think Renfrow, if Renfrow stays on the Raiders, I just think he's a complete non-factor. If he goes somewhere else, maybe he resurrects himself, but no sleepers for me. Any sleepers for you?
No, I have no one listed.
Yeah, none for me. And then Jacobs, but really I would Jacobs and Renfrow definitely the guys I think are gonna have the most downside. But Devontae has more downside than he usually does. Myers, not the number one like just something not to like about everyone. And I don't see the upside outside of the defense just being so bad that they have to and Jimmy Garoppolo's not even been a high volume passer ever. So even that, maybe like those 5 games at San Francisco when he first got there, but especially with all his injuries, is that what they're going to ask him to do? I'm out on the Raiders. That's my that's the way to sum it up for me. Any busts or guys you're specifically down on him?
It begins and ends with Jimmy G. And he's the type of guy I would say, I only like him in a 2 QB super flex format because he has a high floor, low ceiling. But he has a low floor right now because, like you said, they could, release him and save all that cap space. And then maybe he's not starting with anybody this year. So he has a pretty low floor baked in. And just regardless, it's this offense, I don't see it happening. So it begins and ends with Jimmy G. That hard to find much value in this offense right now.
Yeah. I mean, if they, I think if Jimmy G is not the guy and maybe they, whoever's this defense is, I think, going to be bad. The division's tough. They're going to have to throw a lot. So maybe there will be some value at some point if a free agent signs. But right now, with the way they're all priced, I can't do it. So I'm out on the Raiders. That is going to wrap it up. If you want to hear Sean and I talking NFC West, that episode will drop Friday. Our AFC and NFC East, North, and South episodes are already out right here on the Fantasy Flex channel. You can find Sean on Twitter at @the_oddsmaker. Find me there at Chris Raybon, and we're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this shmoney.